Shock! Drones have reached Moscow. A swarm of UAVs is terrorizing the heart of Russia. Red Square under fire? Moscow paralyzed, panic at airports, passengers trapped. Moscow's air defense is breached. Ukraine strikes back for Kyiv. Panic in the Kremlin. Cities are becoming unfit for life and incredibly expensive combat helicopters have turned into scrap metal. On the front lines, it's a real hell. Just 12 minutes on Ukrainian territory and the lives of the occupiers are cut short by a powerful strike of revenge. Urgent! The United States may finally bring the two presidents together. Is a Zelensky-Putin meeting already set? Meanwhile, Britain is preparing to send troops to help Ukraine. The order is already on the table. The world is on edge. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Drones reached Moscow. A swarm of UAVs shocked the very heart of Russia. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin claimed the 20 drones heading toward the city were allegedly shot down.
An unmanned aerial vehicle flying toward Moscow was shot down by the air defense forces of the Ministry of Defense. Emergency services specialists are working at the site where the debris fell.
Flight restrictions were introduced at all 4 airports of the Moscow region: Domodedovo, Vnukovo, Sheremetyevo and Zhukovsky, according to Russia's aviation authority.
Vnukovo, Domodedovo and Sheremetyevo airports are receiving and dispatching flights in coordination with the relevant authorities due to temporary restrictions on the use of airspace in the areas of these airports. The measures were taken to ensure flight safety.
Unidentified drones also struck Russia's Tatarstan region. One of the key oil pumping stations, Kaleykino, was hit and the fire broke out on its territory. Through local stations, including infrastructure around Kaleykino, oil from Tatarstan and neighboring regions flow into a major pipeline that passes through the Samara region and heads west toward Belarus and further into Eastern and Central Europe. Belgrade was also hit hard. Local air defenses couldn't repel a combined UAV and missile attack. Several projectiles reached their targets. Belgrade Region Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov stated that the city of Belgrade and the surrounding district were subjected to a massive missile strike from Ukraine, resulting in disruptions to electricity, water and heating supplies.
The city of Belgorod and the Belgorod district were subjected to a massive missile strike by the armed forces of Ukraine. As a result, there is serious damage to energy infrastructure. There are disruptions in electricity, water supply and heating for residents. We will be able to fully assess the extent of the damage in daylight.
Meanwhile, Telegram channels report that the strike targeted the Frunzinskaya electrical substation near the village of Dragunskaya in the Belgrade district. After the attack, parts of Belgrade were left without power. At the same time, the Pugachevka airfield in Russia's Ural region was struck. Expensive combat helicopters were reportedly reduced to scrap metal. The destroyed Mi-8 helicopter belonged to the 319th Separate Helicopter Regiment stationed in Chernigivka, Primorsky Krai. The Ka-52 helicopter was assigned to the 16th Army Aviation Brigade based in Zernograd, Rostov region. The village where Russian soldiers survived no more than 12 minutes. Fierce fighting continues in the Zaporizhia region. Russian forces are attempting to break through in the Zaporizhia direction to move closer to the city of Zaporizhia. The last major obstacle is the small settlement of Stepnohirsk, which is being fiercely defended by Ukrainian armed forces. As the Times reports, around 20,000 Russian troops have arrived in the area with the intention of advancing north towards Zaporizhia, located 22 kilometers away. Stepnohirsk is described as the final Ukrainian stronghold before the Konka River. If Russian forces cross this natural barrier, they could bring artillery within range of the city.
The loss of Stepnohirsk would allow the enemy to overcome the natural barrier, move artillery and drones forward, and shell Zaporizhzhia around the clock. This would trigger panic among civilians and a humanitarian crisis. It would create conditions for the occupation of Zaporizhzhia and the loss of the regional center.
The battle for Stepnohirsk involves elite units, highlighting its strategic importance. Russian forces have reportedly deployed 2 airborne divisions, a motorized rifle division and a special forces brigade. Facing them at an approximate ratio of 7-1 are Ukrainian Defense Intelligence Special Forces, supported by limited infantry, drone units and territorial defense forces. The Farada group conducts reconnaissance, counterattacks and raids on Russian positions, pushing them back whenever they attempt to gain forward ground.
I believe the average life expectancy of a mobilized Russian soldier here is about 12 minutes, no more. The cost of eliminating one, in terms of ammunition and weapons used, is around $5,000 to $6,000.
The United States is preparing a possible meeting between Zelensky and Putin. Witkoff has outlined potential timelines. The U.S. Special Envoy expects positive news regarding Ukraine and Russia in the coming weeks. In an interview with Fox News, President Trump's Special Envoy stated that proposals he and Jared Kushner brought forward could lead to a meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian leader Vladimir Putin.
It could possibly be a trilateral meeting involving President Trump. We'll see. He does not want to meet unless he is confident he can achieve a result. He has a unique ability to do that. I hope you will hear good news within the next 3 weeks.
According to Witkoff, the war continues due to territorial disputes and the sides have not yet reached consensus. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Kaja Kallas expressed skepticism regarding the envoy's optimism.
I do not share this optimism because negotiators on the Russian side are not truly serious and are unwilling to discuss political issues. We have seen significant pressure on Ukraine to concede and give up what it is not prepared to give up, but that will not bring lasting peace. Therefore, I am not optimistic that we will see results in the coming weeks or months.
How events will unfold remains to be seen. We continue to monitor the situation. The United Kingdom should immediately send troops to Ukraine. This was stated by former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson in an interview with the BBC.
I see no logical reason why we should not send peaceful ground troops there to demonstrate our support, our constitutional support, for a free and independent Ukraine. This is a political question. It is about whether Ukraine is a free country or not. If it is a vassal state of Russia, which is what Putin wants, then obviously Putin decides who comes into his country. If not, then Ukrainians should decide.
He clarified that troops should be deployed to peaceful regions for non-combat roles.
If we have a plan to deploy troops after the war, after Putin graciously agrees to a ceasefire, then why not do it now?
Meanwhile, UK Defence Secretary John Healey stated that he would like to be the first defence minister to send British troops to Ukraine, adding that this would be possible after peace is achieved. In an article for The Telegraph, Healey wrote that 2026 should become the year the war ends. He emphasized that sending British troops would signify peace and the end of hostilities. According to Healey, the UK government is working with allies on forming a so-called coalition of the willing. The proposed multinational peacekeeping mission would protect Ukraine from renewed Russian aggression after a settlement is reached. Healey stressed that there is no greater responsibility for a defense minister than deciding on the use of armed forces, adding that a secure Europe requires a strong and sovereign Ukraine. A breakthrough in missile development. Ukrainian engineers have created a ballistic missile, meaning the armed forces of Ukraine would no longer need external authorization to use such weapons against targets inside Russia. The same applies to the Flamingo missile, which has reportedly demonstrated high effectiveness against targets deep behind enemy lines. British engineers have also joined the process. Details ahead.
The Ukrainian missile, which today is deeply feared and respected not only by our enemies, but thanks to its remarkable precision and pinpoint accuracy, along with its low production cost, is even generating a significant amount of concern among Kyiv's international partners. In February 2022, we asked our Western partners to close the airspace over Ukraine. But by February 2026, it is Europe that is asking Ukraine to share its unique experience on how to do this independently.
It's a very simple technology. There's nothing complicated needed here. There are plenty of books written about this, where everything is explained step by step. What's so difficult about it?
As it turns out, modern American and European air defense technologies have a huge drawback: their cost. Even though Western weaponry is technologically unmatched given the current realities of warfare, NATO would only be able to defend against enemy missiles and drones for a few days. The West simply doesn't have enough resources for more than that, since each missile costs tens or even hundreds of times more than the drones it is used to destroy.
Currently intercepting an Iskander, it costs over $6 million.
And here, Ukraine comes to the West's aid with its unique Flamingo missile.
We want to bring that down to $1 million, $1.5 million, so that intercepting an Iskander would cost that much.
With the help of the FP9 missile?
With the help of the FP7 missile.
The Ukrainian Flamingo is already demonstrating unprecedented effectiveness and accuracy, striking strategic targets in Russia. Developed in record time, the missile has become yet another headache for Putin and his generals. Since the development is entirely domestic, the Ukrainian armed forces do not need permission to strike Flamingo wherever they want or need to. The only problem our developers have to put up with is scaling up production. So far, it has not been possible to produce a sufficient number of missiles per month for the Ukrainian armed forces.
This is strategic weaponry. Unfortunately, strategic weapons cannot be bought or launched today like hotcakes, in the same quantities as FPV drones, so that the effect is clearly seen by every single person, reaching into each and every household. But based on the missions that have been carried out so far, we can see that it fully met the ambitious objectives that we originally set for it.
For now, there are not enough domestic missiles to strike all targets on Russian territory, so our Western partners have to help with this as well. For example, the United Kingdom is developing a new deep strike ballistic missile for Ukraine.
We can categorically state that, first and foremost, we are talking about a missile that can be quickly scaled up and is a relatively affordable and accessible resource. Since the government of the United Kingdom is specifically emphasizing that this should be a cost-effective solution, that is, it should effectively address the complex requirements and demands of the times, as we see that the armed forces need a substantial and consistent volume of such means, and it simply cannot be too expensive for the budget.
As a result, within the framework of the Nightfall project, Britain announced a competition for the accelerated development of ballistic missiles intended for combat operations under conditions of high threat and strong electromagnetic interference. The modern British missile will be able to launch from various platforms, carry out a series of launches, and leave its position within a matter of minutes. The system will be equipped with a 200-kilogram high explosive warhead, feature high accuracy, and have a range of up to 500 kilometers.
500 kilometers. That completely covers the entire temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine. It also covers a significant portion of the European part of the Russian Federation, and at this depth, the enemy positions both its higher-level headquarters from brigade up to divisional, army, and group of forces levels. These are also quite serious logistical hubs. In other words, these are places where fuel and lubricants as well as ammunition depots are concentrated.
In combination with the Ukrainian Flamingo, the British missile could significantly diminish the Kremlin's and personally Putin's desire to continue their campaign. Instead of launching missile strikes on peaceful Ukrainian cities, the bunker dweller will be forced to endlessly defend against Ukrainian armed forces missiles.
The sheer number and the increasing intensity of the operations currently being carried out by our dedicated security forces using advanced strike drones, including those directed against key strategic targets, are effectively wearing down the enemy's air defense forces over time. Furthermore, the powerful combination of ballistic weapons and strike drones can already deliver highly targeted strikes against specific enemy assets that are critically important to their overall operations.
And it will only get worse from here, at least for the Kremlin. Ukrainian developers promise to reach the necessary supply volumes of ballistic weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine by the end of this year, while simultaneously creating more and more types of advanced weaponry.
In 1 year, it's ballistics. In 2 or 3 years, it's the creation of an anti-ballistic air defense shield over all of Europe.
This is for the entirety of the European continent.
Ukrainian defenders have reclaimed 300 square kilometers from occupying forces in the south of the country. The counteroffensive continues. More on the developments. Watch now.
The air assault forces of the Ukrainian armed forces have officially launched an offensive. A corresponding statement was published the day before by the Air Assault Forces Command. Thus, in essence, the General Staff dispelled rumors and stated openly Ukraine is moving forward. The main task assigned to the units is to disrupt the occupiers' plans to advance in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, as well as to defeat the enemy grouping and push them beyond the borders of Dnipropetrovsk region.
Well, we really can say today that the counterattacking activity of the Ukrainian Defense Forces is currently taking place in the Huliai-Pol direction, in the Stepnohirsk direction, and not only there. It's not just the southern front, far from it. Therefore, it is clear that Ukraine is using the reserve resources we have and the opportunities that have arisen, including by introducing a certain amount of chaos, such as disabling Starlink.
At the same time, a number of military analysts note that the Russian Federation is gradually recovering. Reserves that had been prepared for the spring offensive were redeployed from Moscow to the areas where the Ukrainian armed forces broke through. The occupiers are also partially trying to restore reliable communications on the front line. However, so far neither effort has produced any significant results.
There are several main reasons for the success of the Ukrainian attacks. The shutdown of Starlink resulting in the loss of stable communications for Russian troops, as well as the general exhaustion of Putin's units in this sector of the front after prolonged continuous assaults. In addition, the Ukrainian armed forces took advantage of the weather conditions, the same fog that had previously played into the hands of Russian troops several times.
Another crucial factor in Ukraine's success was the preparedness of Russian troops on the other side of the front line, or more precisely, the almost complete lack thereof.
Well, I'll say it straight. 80% are unprepared troops. These are people they gathered from various places under different pretexts: mobilization, recruitment, and pressure. So, accordingly, they are thrown into battle.
It is also worth noting that the reports about the Ukrainian armed forces liberating hundreds of square kilometers of Ukraine have now been officially confirmed by the military. For example, the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin, stated that more than 300 square kilometers have already been liberated and our troops continue to advance.
Ukrainian forces are counterattacking along a wide front, approximately 30 kilometers from Varvarivka to Ternova-Ternovate. If the entire area along this stretch is cleared of infiltrating Russian soldiers, it would amount to about 300 square kilometers.
The command notes that information about the advance of the Ukrainian armed forces is announced with a delay, so as not to jeopardize operations, as has happened in the past. But even what has already been made public allows for cautious predictions that the successes of the defense forces may help thwart Putin's major spring offensive.
On this point, it can be said that Ukraine, again, I am not getting ahead of myself because the security of the ongoing military operation is paramount, has, in my view, at least for now, managed to make adjustments to the conduct of the Zaporizhzhia-Orikhiv offensive operation of the Russian Federation. And here, indeed, we should pause for a moment.
As has already been noted, alongside the advancing assault units of the Ukrainian armed forces, the unmanned systems forces are also showing excellent results, continually increasing enemy losses. And the fact that the occupiers are being forced to retreat has also dispelled yet another myth about the Russian Federation, that its people are, after all, not inexhaustible.
If he had them, he would have already thrown in another 500,000 troops, whom he doesn't have in all directions, and would have long since entered Pokrovsk, and would have already taken Huliai-Pol and Zaporizhzhia, yes, advanced further. But that hasn't happened. In other words, he isn't holding back resources somewhere or hiding them, as many say. So why is that? It's just that they simply don't exist, at least not ready in reality.
By the way, Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky also confirmed in an interview with Le Monde that the war in Ukraine has moved out of a deadlock. According to the General Staff, the front has started to move back, and in recent days there have been up to 50 clashes daily in the Huliai-Pol and Oleksandrivka directions.
The end for Lukashenko? Poland is prepared to mine its borders with Belarus and Russia within 48 hours after withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention. Under the Eastern Shield project, the country intends to secure its borders against potential threats. Meanwhile, has Belarus itself begun mobilization? What does this mean? Stay tuned to find out.
Poland makes a loud statement and strengthens its border. Reservists are being urgently called up in western Belarus. Coincidence?
You can only rely on yourself. Don't count on anyone else. I'm saying it for the 5th time. We have no friends in the world. None.
Men in Belarus have started receiving draft notices en masse. They are being taken the same day, with no time to pack. And on top of that, they take away their phones. So, as relatives report, contact with those who have been drafted is lost immediately.
And then, in the blink of an eye, it completely vanishes from sight, leaving absolutely no evidence behind that it was ever there in the first place. And people are asking each other, say, from some region where this is happening, what about you? Is this happening to you too? The first question everyone asks each other is this happening all over Belarus right now? Or is it still isolated to just a few regions of the country?
Officially, of course, they call it a combat readiness check, not a mobilization. But in Russia, everything also started with assemblies and inspections.
I would say, first and foremost, it's the concealment of information. Indeed, a person is taken away immediately, right away, dragged off somewhere, and their phone is confiscated so they can't inform anyone about what's happening to them next. This is the maximum level of information blackout. And this is the point that should especially concern us because we really don't understand what would happen to people next.
What's interesting, right? This is a call for reservists specifically in the western regions of the country that is near Poland. There is also a strategically sensitive area of Europe, Suwalki Corridor. There are too many coincidences in one place.
A fairly narrow section between the Kaliningrad region and Russia. Partially, in fact, the most populated settlement, Suwalki, is located not far from the border between Poland and Lithuania. The width there, I think, is about 40 kilometers, so it's really quite small. Therefore, if you were to strategically concentrate and mobilize a substantial and formidable array of military forces there, you could, if you'll excuse me, with considerable speed and efficiency, establish and secure a direct land corridor to the Kaliningrad region.
At the same time, Poland announced a 48-hour time frame. That's exactly how long they need to fully mine the border with Belarus and Russia.
Today, February 20th, the country withdrew from the Ottawa Convention and now has the full right to mine its borders.
But could the Belarusian exercises be connected to Poland's own actions?
Even though so far we are only seeing hybrid attacks, that doesn't mean something else couldn't happen tomorrow. A real attack, an actual hot conflict could occur. That's why, of course, I would consider this mobilization story as a real threat, as a genuine risk of a possible attack. And accordingly, well, if it takes more than 48 hours to lay mines, then it's time to start mining already.
Recently, Lukashenko also ordered a large-scale inspection of the combat readiness of the armed forces. At the military base, they practiced everything to the fullest extent.
We are not working for a grade, we are working to be ready to defend our country, to protect our national interest, our sovereignty, our Republic of Belarus. And
now they are urgently calling up reservists. So maybe this is just part of Lukashenko's inspection?
Undoubtedly, in my opinion, this looks like a signal from the West, but we shouldn't perceive it only as a signal. I believe that this should be regarded as a concrete military threat.
And here Moscow appears again. Well, how could it be without it? The Kremlin's almost total influence makes Belarus not just an ally, but a real staging ground for provocations against NATO.
Frankly speaking, these are almost wartime conditions.
Just recall the statement about the Oreshnik on the territory of Belarus.
In addition, the first positions of the Oreshnik missile system have been set up. We have had this equipment since yesterday, and it is now fully operational and on active combat duty.
Or the information that Russia is using Belarusian territory to attack Ukraine and put pressure on European countries.
Operators of Russian Shahed drones are striking Ukraine, including from Belarusian territory. The communication for the strikes is maintained from Belarusian territory. Russia is using Belarus as a testing ground to blackmail Europe.
Nevertheless, Minsk has stated that they do not intend to go to war with Western countries. But it's unlikely that one Kremlin dictator will listen to another, the potato one.
As for being drawn into the war, I doubt it, because in my opinion, Lukashenko still makes these decisions himself. And for now, he wants to keep his freedom to maneuver, including for his own dealings with Trump. A bit of puffing up his cheeks, a bit of... Of course, Lukashenko will put on a show of being dangerous, but you can't say that he is completely under Putin's control. That's not the case. But that doesn't stop him from actually carrying out and preparing provocations.
Lithuania is closely monitoring the developments in the Republic, and they state that there is no reason to panic yet. But Russia clearly has its own plans for Belarus. After all, constantly probing NATO's borders and testing the reactions of neighboring countries is a systematic strategy and a way to test the alliance's patience.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.